Thank you, Kunal, for being here. Kunal, of course, apart from what the MC said, I mean, we know that he's that rare person in the startup world who's not a tech bro. He comes from a different background. He's actually a philosophy graduate, and how has that influenced his thinking? How does he settle on ideas? And more importantly, I want to ask him, even from a media point of view, how do you make people pay for products and services in in India? So these are some of the topics which I thought we will touch upon in our chat today, and we will end the session. We'll also take a few questions from the audience, but no pitches, please. I think that you can do at a later stage. Just sharp, specific questions when your turn comes. So thanks again, Kunal. I would like to start by asking you, uh, you have been talking about how, the Indian consumer is different and how the Indian market is different. So if what will be your advice to somebody who's like starting out in this market, on their entrepreneurial journey, how should they think about that?
Yeah, it's a deep question. So I think it's fair to just talk from the lens of the evolution of Indian consumer has been consistent and it is rapidly accelerating. Uh, the first big phenomena that happened is that uh, uh, everybody has got a chief technology officer and a chief procurement officer at their home now, and that person happens to be between the age group of 10 to 18, right? And they are driving a lot of the tech choices for the families in terms of information, in terms of choices, in terms of preferences. The second point is that for the first time, we have a generation that is aspiring to not just secure a job, but to have something of their own, right? My guess is that probably 80-90% of entrepreneurs that are coming in and doing startups do not come from families where there was historically businesses being done in that family, right? So we are seeing that big change. The other thing is that when it comes to understanding of Indian consumer and what it pays for, I think that's a topic that we'll have some time to adjust to, because for the so far, like I would say the first decade of startups was copying a lot of the Western concepts and applying it to India, right? And I think Indian consumers value things differently, and we are slowly seeing India ideas emerge, right? An idea like free charge or credit doesn't exist anywhere in the West, and there are ideas that are emerging now. I mean, there's an interesting company I discovered, which I'm a small investor in, which has a mall for selling cattle online, right? So I think the nuance is about what will the Indian consumers want and what will they pay for is changing. Having said that, we have some socioeconomic factors that are unique to us. For example, we have a lower female participation of labor, both in urban and rural India compared to many countries, and therefore the choices are very different for a family, right? For example, you will see long tail commerce platforms don't do as well in societies where women do not have independent income as much as, let's say, men do. And therefore, financial services in those markets tend to have significantly higher market cap versus, let's say, a retail chain per se, right? So you'll see that patterns to be there for a while. When it comes to other things, you will notice it that Indians have a great tendency to save, and splurge on important life events, right? Be it wedding, be it a health situation, education. We have this tendency, and I think it doesn't always suit the consumption mindset. And by the way, it's not that the young generation is dramatically different about these choices. They may be obviously spending a lot more than what we do because they have some security in their life. But when it comes to having this mindset towards building, investing, and creating that, and therefore you see there's growth in SIP, mutual funds, investment, unique customers coming in, because the tendency is to kind of build assets, right? And I think that's good for the country. And when it comes to making choices, I think what I see entrepreneurs getting stuck in a lot of times in uh, proximity of problems that they have faced. Let me in the West, it's very common. You hear the West founder saying that, "Oh, I had this problem and I was struggling with it, so I built this solution." Right? in very deep markets, it's a good idea to do that, because any problem you solve is a large enough market, right? Like the smallest category would be probably $1 billion revenue.
Hmm.
But if you do the same thing in India, you might just realize the market depth is probably just you and your family and five other families, right? And therefore, a lot of times I have seen that entrepreneurs get stuck in not understanding what the TAM of that product or service is. When I built Freecharge, I had never used prepaid in my life. But I built a mobile recharge company because 99% of the country was using mobile recharge, right? So the point is that it's important to go after larger markets, uh, and with evidence of profit pools, evidence of revenue pools, evidence of market cap, you may build a more efficient solution to address that revenue or profit pool. But inventing new profit pool and revenue pools may not be as easy because the market is still maturing.
Right. So, but would you say that most of the problems which entrepreneurs are trying to solve today, that is just aimed at the top 3%, 5% of the market?
I think um, business has a role of making revenue and making profits. If they don't do both of them, they will cease to exist, right? And for somebody to be able to give you money for value you provide, they need to have that need and the income to support it, right? Uh, uh, for example, let's say if you were selling jewelry, every single person would want that in the country, but would they have the ability to afford it is a question that will come from their per capita income, right? So India is still building its depth on per capita income while we are nearly $3,000. But if you kind of look at, and data has always come on that, even on Mint, you have published data on how the concentration of the top 2-3% in terms of per capita income is still very strong. And I think that we have to accept that to be true. But let's understand one factor: the urban female participation of labor is not high, which is not causing multiple jobs. For example, dual income households will create 10 jobs, 15 jobs, because there are dual incomes to support it, right? And I think we are still building those depth of markets where there are enough people who have per capita income to spend beyond the basic necessities, right? And therefore, building a business and hoping that somebody will buy it. For example, uh, uh, it's a fun question. How many of you know more than two brand names of cheese in India? Okay, around 15% in this group. So the SKU depth that needs to get created and understanding of consumption, we have to understand that it's going to take some while before we have more need to create that. We are still in the category creation, category establishment versus category differentiation. Uh, and we have to understand that, uh, let's take some other data points. Around 85% of all bank deposit or retail deposit would be probably with 35 to 50 million customers, right? When it comes to UPI, my guess, and without knowing the data over here, probably 50 million customers contribute to bulk of the transactions, right? When it comes to fashion spends, e-commerce, my guess is that the total number of unique customers that buy every month online would be probably in the 15 to 20 million range, right? So while we have built all these capacities and this, I think the per capita income is something that takes its own time to grow. And we have to appreciate that. It will not change by the virtue of doing that. Now, when it comes to building for the masses, there is need for skill, there is need for connectivity, there is need for mobility. There are lots of solutions being built. I mean, you see a company like Misho kind of coming completely later in the game and building an absolutely fantastic solution for the mass India for a very low AOV, addressing the needs of a tier 2, tier 3, tier 4. And you will see more and more companies coming in that direction.
So, what would be the markers for maturity in such kind of startups? In the sense, how is your business sustainable? Have they got the product market fit correctly? I mean, when somebody makes a pitch to you, how do you assess that?
Yeah. I think first it's important to accept that 90 to 95% of all funded startups may not exist even after getting funding. And accepting and celebrating failure culturally is extremely important. Unless we do that, we will have a lot of shame in the ecosystem for failing, and we'll drop multiple batches of entrepreneurs who should be coming and doing well after that. Uh, uh, the net outcome is everybody who has become an entrepreneur before and comes back to the job system, they're actually significantly better because they have managed to see the world at an accelerated rate by taking all the risks that they have done. So I think as a country, we need to appreciate and celebrate risk takers and understand that there is always going to be a 90-95% failure rate in funded startups. I'm not even talking about non-funded startups. Probably it's even going to be even higher. And I think uh, the sign of maturity is a function of, okay, what scale of revenue you have managed to get. For example, in a startup world, it is fair to say that if you get to $100 million of revenue run rate, you have some version of product market fit, but there is no guarantee that you will have the same kind of compounding that, let's say, a mature company gives in public markets, because they are still building the earliness of that. And I think the curse of startup ecosystem, that I feel that you meet a 5-year-old company like, okay, abhi profit kab karega, and when are you going to do this? And I think it's a fair expectation, but I have noticed that it gets asked a lot more by social media versus the board members who are actually investing behind building, let's say, distribution, or creating a unique offering, and so on and so forth. So I think we are getting to that stage. We are entering the phases of that. When it comes to assessing startups, I think 2 3 frameworks that always work. First is what has what is the large market they are going after, right? The mathematical odds of success change if you're going for a much larger market than what you're usually addressing normally, right? Number two is what has been the historical slope of the person who's building. And slope is an interesting concept. Where did they start? Where are they right now? Most individuals, especially founders, maintain their slope, right? And I think slope is an interesting concept that is not really understood in, let's say, normal job lens, but I think slope has an interesting concept. Most individuals maintain their slope, right? So the third thing to think about is when it comes to Indian consumers' motivation, would they pay for it? Now, a simple thing that doesn't work in India is, let's say, SaaS doesn't work as well as Western markets. But there is a very simple explanation for that. Value of time as a concept is very different in West and very different in India, right? And when there is value of time is thought differently, expecting somebody to pay for software that will make their 5 hours of the week disappear is harder to imagine, because they say, "मैं एक आदमी रख लूंगा," right? And I think that nuance is what we have to understand, and understand what will people pay for. And sometimes it's very easy to answer that question by thinking about your own family. Would they pay for this? Right? And sometimes there's a more clarifying answer versus trying to make PPTs and hope that some of these data points and thing. And I think the worst thing to do is take global data and extrapolate that to India, that, oh, this much is the market of this over here, and this much is going to be market of that. At one point of time, India had funded 6 dry cleaning startups also, which will collect something from home and do it, not realizing in the Western market, there are other ways to address that need versus the Indian market. So a lot of time we just do copy paste.
So then, what is the defining factor? Because see, of course, there are a lot of things you said, but in terms of not replicating the West, so then what is the approach then one should take?
Yeah, I think the simplest thing to do is how many founders take the effort to understand where are the revenue and profit pools of India. And the data is public, right? There is enough reports, there is enough public market data available right now. A lot of times, that interest is not there to say how big is this market, and why is somebody doing this category and not doing this category, right? Uh, and a lot of times it's about, I feel passionately about it. I believe we are not at the depth of market where passion based startups will do well. It will do well when there is an evidence of revenue and profit pool of large scale, because your odds of success is a function of how big that revenue or profit pool are, right? The second thing is looking at uh, like uh, is there a unique opportunity to build something versus a crowded market? India has a unique tendency to become the fourth player in some category where your odds of success dramatically reduce. And when you ask them, so how will you differentiate? The answers are not there. They just do one more thing. And it works in दुकानदार setup कि मैंने आपने Lower Parel mein I have made a shop, so I'm going to open a shop in Andheri, so we'll all be. But in the digital world, there is no need for four shops, and therefore you have to create unique innovations and wedges to kind of build something on.
So many startups also seem to be facing this problem of scaling after a certain level. That is one. And the second part is, from your earlier answers, you seem to be suggesting that we should not be putting undue pressure on startups by asking about their profitability. Is it
No,
because of, some high profile examples which listed maybe prematurely, or, and the public market reaction was what it was?
I think public markets are public markets, and they have to operate the way they are operating. I think what I'm talking about is the younger startups, right? They are the system is getting built right now, right? It takes time to establish a new product category. It takes time to establish a new way of approaching things. Mature companies, obviously, they should have their pressure to address. Ultimately, they are supposed to return capital, take care of their shareholders, their team members. So that is not a question. I think the undue pressure is more about if we make it extremely hard for the younger generation to now, for the first time, we saw super highly educated people choosing to do startup versus kind of taking a job abroad. Do we want to kill that trend by kind of over penalizing failures, or we want to accept failures as a mathematical fact about startups? And that's my limited point on that. uh, when it comes to I missed the first part of your question.
About facing a bump, not
Yeah,
being able
I
to
think
scale up. You'll
scale
reach
is
a
a
certain
good
scale.
thing. Uh, Companies fail to scale up, in my view, on a few points. First is the TAM truly doesn't exist. You might just want to sell a nice D2C brand or whatever that you have created, or a startup that is addressing a very unique need. But the total unique customers who have interest in that may be a few hundred thousand, right? The second thing is that team members themselves don't scale, right? You need to, when you build an org from 30 people to 500 people, you need to have extraordinary processes to be able to manage talent. A lot of times companies struggle because they just keep operating like the startup days, and not realizing that now you are running a fully functional setup where people have their career ambitions. People want to grow in the system. People want to understand what is your 5-year view to life, and so on and so forth. And the third thing is that when you are creating a thing, you have to think about capital runways, right? For example, in free charge, I was not very good at it, and many times we were like very close to just disappearing. But at CRED, we made a simple rule that we will never operate with less than 3 or 4 years of runway in the company, no matter what, because it will prevent you from making panic bad decisions. If you take a long enough view, we are in the probably the most lucrative category that exists. But if we kind of kill ourselves by doing something stupid, we'll lose that opportunity to kind of build a generational company over here.
Another related question on this around scaling is that where companies also lose track of governance? Because we have seen some governance issues, and these tend to get highlighted in when it comes to
Yeah, I
startups.
think this probably is my fourth company technically. I have built other companies, and I think you understand the basics of governance are very simple. You are absolutely honest, having high integrity and transparency at all points of time for all the stakeholders, which is your team members, your investors, your co-founders, right? A lot of times what happens is that we kind of find ways to kind of not take these things quite seriously. And that uh, every now and then there'll be some systemic issues where a few companies will have that issue and will correct themselves, right? But I think if we take that approach and say that, hey, the startup ecosystem has this problem, then again we are doing the same penalty clause on the whole system, right? There are enough high quality team members, and otherwise, I mean, technically, no VC should be interested in investing in India if they generally felt that we are kind of people with low governance. I think there will be every now and then there'll be few cases, but that happens in large companies, that happens in public companies, that happens in startups, right? And I think we'll overcome that. I think what is happening is the system is maturing quite quickly, and governance is becoming a very serious topic. for everybody, because ultimately the value systems that you put in place is going to get reflected in every level of the team, right? It's not governance only for the CEO, but every single individual has responsibility to maintain that high integrity culture.
Right. One more question before we go to the audience questions. Do you think that investor appetite has returned and we will see the end of the funding meter for startups? What is
Well,
your
I
sense?
I think it's it's been 15 years for me being in the tech ecosystem now, and I don't know when this is summer winter kind of things come, because it just is a continuous thing. Let's just understand a few factors to think about. Uh, Less than 5% of India's market cap is startup or tech. Do we expect to get to $10 trillion economy and that remaining at 5%? The answer is no. So we have to expect that to kind of get to 10-15%. In the US, it's probably in the 25% or 27% range, right? Second point is that uh, uh, is the money in the world disappearing? No, the money in the world keeps growing, and people have to find avenues to invest, right? And we have to bring the comfort and growth that we are doing. And I think we're entering a fantastic decade right now, right? We have so much innovation that has happened. And we should not forget that 10, 15 years ago, we did not have apps, we did not have UPI, we did not have most of the innovation that we take for granted today, right? When you tell somebody in the West that I can order a food in 10 minutes and blood test in 1 hour's time at home and all of these things, they almost feel like magic to the Western world, right? So we've kind of accelerated on innovation only because we've had the capital to support this. Uh, uh, I believe that India will remain very, very important for every investor in the global market. And obviously, we have to deliver. Ultimately, investor will keep coming if there is going to be a return that consistently comes from the country, and we'll have to see the maturity of the system. And I think we will see many, many examples. Uh, um, it's too means 10 years ago, if I was asked, will we have 100 unicorns, I would have laughed at that topic. If I was asked 5 years ago that will we have hundreds of companies potentially breaching $100 million revenue mark, I would have laughed at that as well. So I have reached a point to kind of also be humble about that. We cannot predict how quickly the ecosystem is growing, because we are entering a country where our ability to leapfrog on technology and innovation is unparalleled to any other country.
Great. We'll take audience questions now. Yes. Please keep your questions short and ask a specific question. No commentary, please.
Uh, okay, so I'm going to take the privilege of being a Mint employee to go first. We have an annoying habit in Mint Money where we ask people how they invest their own money. So, Kunal, that's my first question to you. How do you invest your money?
I only have startups as my investment. I do not have any mutual fund, any stock. I wish to pay it forward. I believe that all the success that I've got is from the ecosystem, and I would love to kind of do that paying forward. It may not be the best investment strategy. I would not advise that to people. It's a very high risk category. I talked about 95% failure rate, anyways. But I believe that if I am contributing towards the ecosystem, it will set more examples and more people will want to do that, because ultimately we need more people to support the startup system versus kind of just be critique of it.
Just one other thing. You said you don't have a favorite credit card, but of late there have been instances where banks very suddenly reduce the rewards on credit cards, and it sends shockwaves to consumers. So, any take on that?
Well, banks have a P&L to run, and they will do what is appropriate to attract customers and make their P&L right. It's not the first time we will see reward programs having changes, but it's just the norm. What is true though, we are seeing an acceleration on usage of credit and credit cards. We will see now more stuff happening because of RuPay, which is allowed on UPI. You will also see acceleration because of credit on UPI that will accelerate things. So, uh, uh, as a category, very, very bullish. It's unfair to comment about one card program changing here and there.
I Kunal, Pankaj Jain from ProGrowth Ventures. We are seeing a trend where a lot of one founder is investing into another founder's business. Now, that's good from an ecosystem perspective. But what worries me is an aspect that the founder who's investing is in the market raising the fund and is not EBITDA positive. So how do you see that?
It's a great point. Then the question is, how does the founder have money in life? And it's unfair to assume कि वो चोरी कर रहा है. They may have other sources of income. They may have family income that is driving that. I believe that uh, should they be given only the moral right to invest in startups only if they have become profitable is unfair. Although I only invested in startups after I had my first exit, so I should not be preaching the same thing. I actually did not invest in a single startup till I had my first exit, which was actually a very large exit to have some capital to myself. Personally speaking, at Freecharge, I had borrowed money from my employees to take care of my income because I had very little salary in Freecharge. So I think uh, the key point is that we should kind of not judge this and not be like this classic Indian parent which operates in taunts, right? It's not a fair thing, right? There are people doing what is required. It is better than people doing investing in some crazy things that have happened in India otherwise and avoiding some of those risky assets.
Can I ask? Hi, Kunal. This is Chetan Khanna. You made an interesting point on managing talent when you grow from a few to 500 people. And being an HR professional, I can completely relate to that as to what it means. The question I would have is that what would it take for a SME or a startup founder to really understand that what brought them here will not take them where they want to go?
I think that realization is happening at a very rapid pace. Scaling is a very different art form versus creating, right? Creating is somewhat of a high success, high failure rate, but once you found a product market fit, scaling is a very different ball game, right? It requires a lot of rigor, a lot of discipline, a lot of planning on talent, and so on and so forth. And I think startups are realizing it quite quickly. Uh, uh, to create that acceleration is hard unless we have enough failures in the ecosystem where people actually genuinely realize that I failed not because the opportunity was bad or the capital market was bad, I just badly executed with my team. And I have seen 90% of failures happen because of fires inside the building versus outside the building, right? And I think that is just a matter of time that people will realize. But uh, expecting them to also follow processes like a big company will also kill them. I get asked this question that when does a startup become a big company? My answer is very simple. When the ratio of risk-taking people in the company depletes dramatically.
Thanks. Thank you so much.
So, so what's next for CRED, Kunal? I mean, you had set out to build a community of the elite. Do you think you have succeeded in that?
I'm curious. How many of you use CRED over here? Yeah, I'm getting there. Like close to 60% people raise my hand, and 40% are still not there. I'm getting there. This is my test every time. And we are very early in our journey. We should remind everybody that we are a 5.5-year-old company that has been at it and constantly innovating. We believe that focusing on this customer set, doing more product innovation on that, and we hope to keep doing things that are not done in the world and be the first and be one of these companies that are known for true product innovation and focus on a customer segment. Uh, it is easy to get distracted and say, ye bhi karte hain, wo bhi karte hain, but we are very clear about our roadmap and what we'll execute. And actually super excited about this. Thankfully, we are focusing on the customer that is actually quite lucrative as a segment. And we hope that we'll kind of keep creating more innovation to serve them.
And do people still ask about profitability?
They should. And I think let's be very clear. A business is not establish itself as a business till it is profitable. Unfortunately, uh, uh, thanks to all the capital that startups raised, we have celebrated founders who have not been profitable way too much. And I think it is a problematic trend. There are like millions of founders in India who have been running profitable business for a much longer period of time, and I think we do not give them due attention and due respect for what they have done, and hopefully we'll find some balance in the future.
Right. Suppose you were to exit CRED, what would be the next exciting idea you would work on?
I wouldn't want to exit CRED. I think there is exciting possibility for at least 2-3 decades for CRED as a roadmap. But I think opportunities are all around us. The simple principles I always tell people is that understand the true motivation of the market that you operate in. And there are unlimited opportunities out there. We are entering a world where there is DPI, there is AI to support you. You have cheap data, engineering bandwidth available for the country. So many trained founders now, so many ex-founders now, so many mentors in the ecosystem. Should be significantly easier to build a company now.
Well, thank you, Kunal. We have run out of time. Thank you so much.
Thank
Ladies
you.
and gentlemen, Kunal Shah.
Ravi, on behalf of all of us, I'm going to request you to please present a token of our extreme gratitude to Kunal. Kunal, thank you so much for those incredible insights and for sharing your journey with us. Can we have a huge round of applause once again, ladies and gentlemen? It's Kunal Shah, founder CRED.